We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
We'll be a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from the spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come, build a land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Hillsboro online worship service. My name is Lou Gadol, and I am your worship associate today. I'd like to thank Reverend Holly Lux Sullivan, our speaker, Wendy Calvin, our wonderful videographer, and Aviva Enoch, our marvelous music coordinator, as well as the many wonderful singers who will be featured throughout the service. Most of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. We are a community of liberal, open-minded people who strive to connect with one another in love. Our spiritual home is located at 1710 Old NC 10, but our community stretches far and wide with loved ones who join us from all over the country as we engage in Sunday worship online. We are a people defined by covenant, not creed. That means that we've committed to a way of being with one another rather than a statement of belief. To that end, we support each other in spiritual growth and deepening of faith. We challenge one another to find more love, both inside ourselves and in the world. And today, we welcome you with open arms to our house of worship.
It begins now in the imagination by Reverend Gretchen Haley. It starts here, in this moment, in this breath you feel rising in your chest, the beat building between us, the healing, the hunger, the hope, the courage the calling, the commitment, this drawing out of a new day. It begins now. In the imagination, in this story we weave together, this song we sing, this prayer we bring into being, from our hearts to our lips, from our hands to our life, our shared life. It starts here. We praise and thanksgiving, forgiveness, and this humble centering confession that we could be wrong. This promise that we make to keep learning, to keep trying, to keep our sense of humor, to keep close this knowing that we are all in this together. Come, let us begin. Come, let us worship together.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
This is In the Soft Light of This Flame by Reverend Scott Taylor. In the soft light of this flame, may our lives shimmer anew. May we notice new possibility in those relationships that seem lost. May the turning of year give birth to a dream. May the emerging light pull a new story into view. May what is give way to what might be. May we believe again in the world we imagine.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentations. I hear the real, the far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing when tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing? When friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing to prison cell and dungeon vile? Our thoughts to them are winging, when friends by shame are undefiled. How can I keep from singing?
Rest in the peace of this moment. Rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment. Be at ease. Look up at the stars and down at the grass. Imagine the stars looking back at you over years and centuries across oceans of empty space. Imagine the feel of the grass on your bare feet and feel it, dry and crunchy, soft and supple. Rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment. Dream for a little while of young people and young animals, innocent in the way of the young, careless and uncaring, accepting everything in their newness. Dream for a little while of the elders and the wisdom they have to give, the voices that say to you, it is right and proper to rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment. Be still at the turning axis of the world and let go of the long unspooling of history, of sorrow and joy and birth and death and all the long years between. Rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment.
Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a sharing community where our joys are celebrated, and a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. Each Sunday, we take a moment to share and reflect on the special happenings that have occurred this week in our lives. For those of you who would like to share in the comments or the chat, please do, and know that everything shared aloud and in silence is held dearly in the heart of this community.
My friends, we are past the winter solstice. Daylight is slowly growing day by day, yet we remain in the thick of winter. The Earth in our hemisphere is primarily dormant on its surface. Winter can be a bleak time outside our homes as well as inside our hearts. This is probably truer this year than ever before. Like many of you, I am tired. I feel without a spark in this new year. I want to be full of hope, joy, excitement, but I'm struggling to feel those things. I share this in hopes that any of you who might be feeling the same way will feel a little less alone in it. For me, that feeling generally isn't a problem, to be honest. My husband understands what I'm going through, and I don't really see anybody else. But then I come to a Sunday when I'm scheduled to preach, and that requires me to write and deliver a sermon full of hope, a sermon that ignites the imagination. That is when my lack of an internal spark became problematic. As I began to think about imagination, I realized how anemic my own imagination had become. 2020, when everything changed, took a toll on my imagination, as it probably did on yours. Relatively speaking, I have been incredibly lucky during this time of pandemic, racial reckoning, and political polarization. My work allows me not only to stay employed, but also to work from home. The same is true of my husband. We're still able to pay the bills. We are warm and safe. I occasionally see a friend when we get takeout, sit in our cars side by side with the windows down, and talk while we eat. I recognize that what to me is emblematic of lack is in fact a luxury. The ability to sit in a parking lot, running the car, burning its gas to stay warm, just so I can spend an hour with a friend. It's a luxury to order groceries online and not worry about paying $2 extra to have a grocery clerk pick them out in the store, then load them into the car for me. I recognize the insane amount of privilege I have. So it's a struggle to acknowledge that these months of confinement and isolation have dampened my imagination. Yet of course they have. My world has shrunk to the walls of our home and the parking lots of the grocery store and my favorite Mexican restaurant. In person, I see my husband and two friends, one at a time and more than 6 feet apart. Occasionally I see coworkers on Zoom meetings. I've realized how much I miss what I previously would have called meaningless everyday interactions with people. Folks at work I know by name and face that I say hello to and have simple pleasantries with. They're people I'm not connected enough with to go out of my way to contact, but their presence enlivened my life in ways I never realized until now. Just as people crave comfort and the familiarity of routine, so too do we crave variety in the faces we hear, the faces we see rather, the voices we hear, the bodies we share space with. And we haven't had variety for months. The everyday things that spark our imaginations and hopes are largely absent right now. Paradoxically, the routines that gave us a sense of security are the same things that also offered us variety. Going into the office and saying hello to a dozen people before 11 a.m. Being surprised by someone bringing in donuts or cupcakes. A former coworker stopping by the office to say hello. For our own sakes, we must acknowledge the intangible losses 2020 brought, as well as the tangible ones. Psychologist and author Dr. Thema Bryant Davis says, when there's a lack of structure or routine, it increases the feeling of loss, despair, disconnection, and a sense of being out of control. As a grief counselor, I deal with folks daily whose grief makes them feel numb, as though they're sleepwalking, and above all, lonely. Grief makes us feel our spark has gone out, which I point out simply to say that what we're all feeling is grief. It's hard to call it grief if we haven't personally had a loved one die, yet that's exactly what makes this grief difficult. It's invisible, intangible. Bryant Davis says there is a gift in the truth-telling, emphasizing our need to stop pretending we're not hurting. She says, we are complicated beings. You may be grateful that you have your health and still very disappointed about the losses of this year. One feeling doesn't cancel out the other. Importantly, to reinvigorate our ailing imaginations, we must acknowledge the hardship we're going through. We must allow our hearts and souls to rest, just as the earth does. I want to give you something I offer my grieving clients when they're struggling. It's the idea of a candle burning in their chest. A candle whose flame might flicker and dim, but as long as we draw breath, it burns. We all have it, even if right now its flame is little more than an ember. Take a moment, if you will, and close your eyes. Place your hands somewhere on your chest where that flame might flicker. For me, it's right about here. Picture how bright your candle is burning this morning. Is it a full, robust flame beaming brightly? Is it such a tiny flicker you can barely see it, so small it gives off no heat? Take a moment to consider your flame, what state it's in right now, today. My flame is pretty small these days. Yet that tiny flickering flame is where my faith is now, as winter's cold pushes in on us and the pandemic rages on. I look for its brightness outside myself when I need to. As it does every winter, the flame takes many forms. Countless plants working their magic under the surface to give us buds come spring. Trees' roots busily soaking up nourishment to throw out bright leaves. Animals spending more time tucked into their dens, creating life. This year, too, there are new sparks of light for us to celebrate. The vaccine, even if it's not yet within our grasp if we're not doctors or nurses. The possibility that our Congress will begin to work together again for the good of all Americans. The countless works of art from albums to street exhibitions that have proliferated during the pandemic. And the idea of reforming how police operate in our country, providing more support for mental health professionals to respond to emergencies instead of or alongside officers. None of these sparks is going to catch overnight, but imagining doesn't usually happen in a bolt of lightning. Often imagining is more like a gentle summer storm that lasts for hours. Australian author Zara Quinton writes about her trip to the Daintree rainforest in far north Queensland. She'd visited there years before, and her second trip made her realize how the rainforest had crept into her speculative fiction. Her debut novel, Air Woman, follows a young woman as she tries to discover her father's killer in a world where dragons and magic are real. One of the primary settings is a lush rainforest. Quinton shares her thoughts on how her initial experience of the Daintree rainforest seemed to have seeped into her, only to come out years later in the setting of her book. She writes, "I shouldn't have been surprised. That's how ideas work. A little kernel of an idea will settle inside the subconscious, nestling in unnoticed until the time comes for it to be used. It will then step into the limelight as though appearing for the first time, but it had been hidden there, waiting all along." For Quinton, her experience of the real rainforest lodged in her subconscious for years before it bloomed in her first novel. She wasn't even aware she was imagining, but she was. This is what happens when we allow ourselves rest. We make a place for imagination to take hold, even if we feel we are utterly without creativity. Imagination takes time to brew, as it were. Our subconscious minds are working all the time, even if our conscious minds are beaten down by pandemic and grief. The inspiration will be there when we're ready for it, for whatever we need it for. Creating art, writing computer code, changing a recipe until the result is a completely new dish. That's why imagination is an aspect of faith. We have to believe it will be there for us. We also have to practice it. How many writers have I heard talk about writing as the work of sitting down at the computer and writing every single day for hours a day, even if they never end up using 98% of what they've written? It's about putting in the time. That's the precarious balance of imagination. Trusting it will be there when we're ready and dedicating ourselves to it enough that we build the muscle. There will be times of dormancy when we feel depleted and simply can't imagine doing something new or different, when doing the everyday is hard enough. And there will be times of great fruition when all the parts fall into place and the new thing will burst forth. Songwriter Nick Cave was asked what he does when the lyrics just aren't coming. His response speaks to this paradox of seeming dormancy that leads to fruition. I want to share a fairly lengthy piece of his writing in response to what do you do when the lyrics aren't coming. He says, what we are talking about is not a period of not coming, but a period of not arriving. The lyrics are always coming. They are always on their way toward us, but often they must journey a great distance and over vast stretches of time to get there. They advance through the rugged terrains of lived experience, battling to arrive at the end of our pen. In time they emerge, leaping free of the unknown. It has been a long and arduous journey and our waiting much anguished. Our task is to remain patient and vigilant and to not lose heart, for we are the destination. We are the portals from which the idea explodes, forced forth by its yearning to arrive. We are the living instruments through which the idea announces itself, the flourishing and the blooming, but we are also the waiting and the wondering and the worrying. Just as psychologist Bryant Davis points out that we can hold gratitude for our own health alongside sorrow for what the pandemic has taken from us, Cave points out the songwriter as both the blooming and the worrying and the wondering. The spark of our inner candle can be quite dim, and it still burns. Even if you think of yourself as someone with very little imagination, the reality is we all have imaginations. The imagination is the part of ourselves that makes us as children play with imaginary friends and sip tea with no cups or saucers. As adults, imagination helps us consider a new job, moving, starting or ending a relationship, or what we want our retirement to be like. Imagination lets us glimpse possibility and try it on for a while. It can get us into legitimate, terrible trouble and help us create what Congressman John Lewis called good trouble. Imagination needs us to trust in it and to tend to it. It needs us to make room for it to lie fallow, trusting it will make itself known when we are ready to receive it. As we begin a new year, my prayer is that each of our imaginations is brightened with hope for the future, that the candles in our hearts burn a little bit brighter, and that when they dim, we give ourselves permission to rest and restore our bodies and spirits. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with the wind, let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
We extinguish this flame, but not the spark of joy in our worship, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. Blessed be, my friends, until we meet again.
To my loved ones and relations, with me in spirit every day, to neighbors I have not yet met, close to home and far away. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. To my friends who make good music, sharing joy both far and wide, and to those who we depend on to teach, to heal and guide. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. And to all who hear this message, to strangers and to friends, here's an embrace of music until we meet again. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Come on now, be safe, wash your hands, you mean the world to me. Be safe, wear your mask, you mean the world